Halo, selamat pagi.
Hai, si Juan.
Hai, Kevin.
Halo, selamat pagi Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih sudah hadir di webinar untuk solusi Servicenow dengan tema pengetahuan optimalisasi pengelolaan aset IT di perusahaan untuk kinerja bisnis yang lebih produktif dan maksimal. Perkenalkan, nama saya Kevin Teja dari PT Mitra Integrasi Informatika sebagai Product Marketing Representative untuk Servicenow. Nah, webinar hari ini akan membahas bagaimana solusi dari Servicenow dapat membantu perusahaan Bapak Ibu dalam mengelola aset IT, ya baik software ataupun hardware. Nah, nanti selain ada presentasi singkat juga ada live demo. Nanti di akhir sesi juga ada feedback form bagi Bapak Ibu nanti yang mengisi akan dapat Certificate of Attendee. Di sini saya juga sudah bersama Ricky sebagai pre-sales di MII, ada si Juan, Head of Partners dari Servicenow, ada Manis Desai, Advisory Solution Consultant, dan ada Daniel Eng, Solution Sales Manager dari Servicenow yang nanti akan membantu untuk presentasinya. Nah, langsung saja saya persilakan Daniel. Hai Daniel.
Hello. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for the...
Yeah.
Should I start?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Thank you so much for the introduction. Right. Hello, everybody. Thank you again for joining us in this session today. My name again is Daniel. Right. With me here today, I have Manish, who's actually our technical SME around the software and also the IT asset management. After I've run through a bit of the content around what this IT asset management concept is all about, and hopefully you all find some takebacks that you can appreciate on. Right, Manish will also be showing a bit around the solution demo for everybody's convenience. Okay, so without further ado, I will just start this off right now. Usual safe harbor notice: some of the contents of what we shared, right, could be forward-looking material and they are subject to change. So just take note of the fact that usually in some of this is all usually the so-called features that we are actually talking about, and I will definitely highlight if there are some of those that are future capabilities. But more so, right, it's all about the current capabilities of what we are talking about. So I think everybody here sees that what we are doing today and what we would potentially be doing, say 1 year ago, will be pretty different. I would probably be sitting in one of the hotels in a conference room where all of you will be sitting together with me in presence, where I'll be up on stage presenting this. But things have changed. It's very new. This is the new kind of a normal. So with the kind of COVID situation and the way we are right now, right, I think it's even more apparent. Everyone, including organizations, need a new way to workflow. So these new workflows and these new ways of working is something that have less to do with so-called whether you're on site getting that things done or not. It's really about how you operationalize everything and automate them as much as possible. So let's take a closer look into how the Now platform delivers this smarter way to workflow for our customers. So if you look at where the whole slide comes out here, right, at the bottom, most of you would already be very familiar with the fact that you probably have a SAP ERP, maybe some Salesforce, some Azure, GCP, right? All these are all considered their own siloed systems of record, right? So the thing here is they are very good at doing what they're supposed to be doing. No doubt about that. The key here is, how do you make sure that everything flows around them seamlessly? That is the real challenge. And this is where ServiceNow introduces this unified cloud platform. We call it the Now platform. Positioning of it is as a platform of platforms for any kind of organization. The difference really is this: it's really a single platform with a single database model, a single architecture, while connecting to all the rest of the systems of record for your organization. And what this allows your organization to do is to flow the data more frictionless within the platform. And of course, on top of that platform, ServiceNow designs different categories of applications, which again, they're designed to work better together because they are all native applications that recognizes all the various data models that are within the platform itself. And what's a platform if it doesn't have the right kind of experience for today's employees or even users, right? So that's why it's very important that the native mobile capabilities running on, say, iOS, on Android, they're all available readily for anybody when they use these applications on ServiceNow. And also, of course, the flexibility to access them through web, or even accessing the platform through conversational tools like the likes of Messenger, Slack, and so on and so forth. And even Teams, the conferencing tool that we're using today. So what is this IT asset management, right? At the very core of it, IT asset management is really just a set of practices that's meant to actually combine the financial aspects of the business when it comes to assets, the contractual obligations of the assets, and how do you inventorize the assets that you have so that it supports the entire life cycle. So if you look at the bottom left here, these are some of the very key questions IT asset management would want to answer. What software and hardware do you own? Are you only buying what you need? Are you already using what you have? And last but not least, very, very important when it comes to auditing, can you prove you have what you have and is still in process? So that is where the entire life cycle, as you can see here, goes through from request, fulfill, all the way to retirement. And that in itself is what really IT asset management is all about, right? Helps your organization to actually control your inventory that's purchased, reducing the cost of managing all this, right? Manage the entire life cycle from all the way from planning to purchasing to eventually retirement, achieving the compliance necessary so that you comply with your company's regulations, you comply with the industry's standards, you comply with your country's regulations if there is any, and of course improve the service to end users so that all this asset management is not just an internal function to the asset management team, but more of a game changer for all the end users too. So in this area, actually, Servicenow is really we are really happy, right? And honored also to know that a lot of our customers actually appreciate the solution that we had within the short 3 years of the solution being in the market, right? From a Gartner perspective, we are already today a leader. If you compare to the rest of the products out there under the Gartner Magic Quadrant, they've been in the industry for way, way, way longer, right? But ServiceNow, we managed to deliver this because of the support and trust from our partners, and we really want to continue to deliver this this so-called recognition, right? By making sure that we deliver the kind of outcomes that organizations look for, right? For instance, in terms of the compliance, in terms of the delivering the end user experience. So this is basically where we are actually looking at. And if you want more details, feel free to actually scan this QR code that you see here on this screen. There are more a detailed report from Gartner that you can actually read around this. So I've explained very briefly in terms of the life cycle, but this is where I'm just going to explain a little bit more in terms of the use cases, right? From a request perspective, you will see that you can actually provide for self-service software catalog for your employees so that they can request for software or even hardware, and then the system will go through this phase where it will map it to, do I have that software or hardware? If it's a hardware, is it already in so-called my virtual store, right? And if it is there, I won't need to purchase it. I can move on to starting to deploy it. But if it's not there, I can trigger off a different process so that the procurement can actually procure the software or the hardware necessary. And from a deployment perspective, I want to be able to see what kind of licenses that has been allocated, right? And automated deployment that connects to one of my endpoint solutions that I have within my organization, right? From a monitoring perspective, when it's business as usual, I want to make sure the software is being used, right? The legal costs associated with the compliance is actually reduced as much as possible. From a servicing perspective, I want to ensure the software being used by the employees doesn't cause any kind of a security risk to the organization. In case there is any vulnerability, right? I want to have a means of managing that. And then, of course, eventually, if I need to retire them, how do I reclaim some of this software, right? Or even blacklist certain software that are not supposed to be in the enterprise environment, right? So you can see here, this is a whole life cycle that's provided by ServiceNow through our various offerings around the IT asset management. With this itself, this solution actually allows the elevation of the IT to ensure that IT provides constant value, right? When workflows are automated, when the strategic objectives of the organization are achieved through understanding what drives the business. So just going to build out the rest of this. These are again various use cases that are there. So IT asset management actually comprises of not just pure software, it also has the hardware asset management capability. So this is where, here is where I'm just going to share a bit of the key capability around the hardware asset management, right? With hardware asset management, if you map it back to the previous life cycle, you will see that it's also very important you're able to actually normalize all the hardware within the organization. And you're able to manage the life cycle and automate them as much as possible. As new purchases comes in, how do you record the asset into the system effectively through scanning of QR code? And as the assets are being used, how do you audit them? That is where asset inventory audit process is there. And for the hardware asset manager, the manager itself, do you have an overall dashboard that you can see how this whole thing works? Right? Whether there's any gaps, whether there's any kind of an end of life that's coming up, right? And replacement life cycles, all these are very important for the hardware asset manager. So if we go to the context, when would organizations really go into this? Usually you will see some of these key compelling drivers, right? For instance, when organizations face budget cuts, they want to look at where the software assets that are not being used can be actually recovered back, so that any new person who really needs access to the software will get to use it without the need to actually go back for more budgets, right? And then of course there are unplanned areas of the business, especially when it comes to software compliance audits, which is a pretty common sight of where me and Manish are seeing across the region when we talk to different customers, right? A lot of customers, when they see that suddenly, say, one of the big publishers like Oracle or IBM comes in saying that I need to do some compliance audits, right? The IT team takes a long time to put together where's the license position, right? Easily, I've seen it's a 3-week to 4-week kind of work to come to a state where you truly understand where your license position is. And even then, at that point in time, you would see that the position that you've collected on may already have been a little bit outdated. Okay. So from a software asset management, ServiceNow would always talk about these 3 prong step. A lot of organizations like to actually break up their journeys into different phases, and this is what ServiceNow would recommend. First, you want to focus on reducing your known SaaS spend, right? The SaaS are the likes of the Box, Salesforce, Dropbox, Zoom, and for instance, because once connected to this SaaS, ServiceNow SAM can actually help you to understand what are the level of usage, and you can really decide if the licenses are needed by the end user. Very quick. Time to value, a few days. What, based on the research that are there, right? At least, right, 40% of the IT spending is outside of IT, right? Which means it's not going through the proper IT spend. So this is where, right, as the next phase, most of our organizations or customers will want to start to find out what are the shadow spend that is out there. And this is where phase 2 is actually used to. The value realization can usually be obtained in a couple of weeks. Last but not least, we are talking about the big, huge publishers. And that is where you want to optimize your enterprise software spend and even mitigate your audit risk, right? Unfortunately, the journey for this is a lot more complicated because there's a lot of legacy software. There's a lot of considerations from license so-called advisory that you probably get from the various advisory companies to the technology to implement it in a hybrid IT environment, right? You would have seen that the likes of say Microsoft, right? It's not totally on-premise. It's probably a combination of cloud together with the on-premise. So how do you effectively understand the true license position, right? Then you throw in additional complications. You have the E3 licensing, and then you have the E5 licensing, SAP licensing. You're talking about the limited professional licensing. You have the entire full professional license from SAP, which is also a huge gap. So that itself, if you manage to move to the next step, will be very key because it provides a lot of the ROI. But of course, the time required to invest in this will be slightly longer than the phase ones and the phase two. So I've talked a little bit about software asset management, but really how it works. So what we're going to very quickly go by is this, right? Software asset management, it actually takes up the purchase and entitlement records of your organization, couple it with the usage discovery that the solution actually discovers through in terms of the usage of your customers, of your end users, whether be it on premise or on the cloud itself, and goes through this process to normalize and reconcile. And from this process itself, you'll be able to actually advise whether you've overspent, whether you are already out of compliance. And from here on, of course, most software asset management tools would only give you the ability to understand a report. What is more important that is usually lacking is actionable workflows. This is where ServiceNow shines because we provide a platform, right? With this platform, your organization can have a very managed, governed workflow, right? To actually correct the waste and ensure compliance. And this is only executable with a ServiceNow platform. And of course, the source of data can be a lot. This is quite a busy slide. But in summary, what you see here is the fact that the discovery information can come from many different sources. You can use the native ServiceNow discovery or your most common endpoint tools like the SCCM and the BigFix, right? To collect the usage information and reconcile them into the ServiceNow CMDB and eventually delivering the outcome for your organization. So I've talked a little bit about the reducing the known SaaS spend in phase one. All right. So this is what it looks like in terms of the dashboard. What is really important is really to understand that at the end of the day, the outcome that's important for your organization is you're able to identify usage from your top SaaS vendors out of the box, or even connect to any of the SaaS vendors through API and reclaim wasted costs for your organization. And on your next renewal, you can either renew it at a lower quantity or at the more reasonable quantity for your organization, thereby saving further costs on that area. So very, very usual. Gartner estimate there's easily 30% cloud waste without a solution like ServiceNow. And of course, in the next phase, you want to detect unknown softwares. And in this area, the capability is we're able to actually provide spend detection for over 65,000 shadow softwares that potentially can be purchased by your line of business users. And we can identify whether the softwares are overlapping in capability. Then you can use through our adjacent capability to actually take action to reduce redundancies, for instance, through the IT business management capability of ServiceNow. So what it really helps, as you can see at the bottom here, it helps to answer some of the questions like, why do we still have 5 file sharing apps and we are already spending 1.3 million? Can we do with just one or maybe maximum two file sharing apps for our organization. And of course, after you've gone through phase 1 and phase 2, the next thing really is you are actually at the area where you want to optimize your enterprise software spend. And this is where we actually would also look into the Gartner to actually help provide some of this kind of guidance for us, right? Gartner actually estimates we can have up to 30% savings first year easily, right, on investment of the software asset management. But from Servicenow, we are a little bit more conservative. We look at the fact that if the customer revenue is around 1 billion, we only want to estimate around 10% savings as a conservative number, right? But that's still pretty sizable. That's still a very sizable number in terms of the outcomes for our organization. And again, at the end of the day, you will be able to answer what is your annual software spend and what I just mentioned, the 10% saving. How would the return make sense for your organization? Now, I've talked a little bit about the phases 1, 2, and 3. Now, let me just very quickly go through some customer examples. Right, this is one which is a transportation organization. They without software asset management, they were having like say 15,000 users who were no longer using a lot of different applications, but IT just can't track all those, right? So a lot of those tracking usually were just manual. So a lot of software is wasted whenever there's a renewal because you don't know what you don't know. But with software asset management, what they managed to achieve is they have reclaimed about 200,000 at least savings in annual maintenance, right? And rationalize 40 of the aging apps. So with this, they are now actively monitoring the software usage, reclaiming the unused software with a workflow. Remember, I was mentioning the important thing is not the report. It is how can you have an automation workflow that you can see is delivering the outcome that's needed to reclaim the software. And eventually, again, using workflow to reallocate the licenses to avoid unnecessary purchases. So in this case, this organization managed to reclaim unused software and save up to 7.8 million in the first year of investment into this solution. And of course, there's a very key reason why most of our customers are also looking into the IT asset management, specifically software asset management, is to mitigate the compliance risk. So I'm sure all of you who are in the business of managing your software licenses, it's not a question of if the software publishers come and audit, it's a question of when. So the chances of 2 or more audits annually really is as high as 68% for really, really huge organizations. And you can really see in these news clippings, there's quite a lot of organizations that got into very, very unpleasant situation. And this is another example of one of our closer customers, CLSA. CLSA is a financial organization based out of the Hong Kong itself, right? So they actually are investing in the software asset management from Servicenow. Their driver again is similar to the fourth item that I just shared earlier on. There's this audit and regulatory demands that they meet business compliance. So what they see at that point in time is that they have no proper system to able to actually track that reliably. It's all in Excel, right? So because of this, they went ahead and actually utilize solution and break it up into 2 phases to actually implement a solution from Servicenow. In the first phase, they actually gathered data from the SaaS procurement system, and then they define their various governance models, and they focus their governance lifecycle on all these high value, high priority software. And of course, in the phase 2, they start to inventorize everything that they can find. And then again, they iteratively keep finding as much automation as possible. so that more and more of that asset management processes are automated as much as possible. And this is the outcome that they achieve. Just within the first year of investment, looking at just one particular license that they start to focus on, right? Microsoft SQL licenses, they are already saving upwards of 140K US dollar a year. And additional potential cost savings that amount to about 78K a year. Total savings for them in the first year alone is at least 210K. And that is only on Microsoft SQL. So don't forget, any organizations as large as CLSA will not only have SQL, they have other enterprise software. So now they are on their next journey to actually realize more and more cost benefits as they start to target the rest of the enterprise software and calculate their savings from there. That is how the software asset management and the iterative approach would help. So if your organization is interested in understanding how much can your company save, I would highly recommend you make use of our Forrester Value Calculator. Now, this value calculator, even though it's on the Servicenow website, it's actually based on a calculation on the Forrester Total Economic Impact Studies by Forrester itself. It's already certified. So what it means by certified is it can give you a good gauge when you provide in some sample information in terms of roughly what is a potential saving for most organizations, because Forrester did this so-called study on quite a number of enterprise organizations. Okay, and before I move on to the demo, I just want to highlight why Servicenow. You've seen the fact that you can get a report on your asset management, and that itself is one outcome. But what's most important really is you are able to connect the entire enterprise on a single platform and automate the IT lifecycle with the workflow. Only with this will organizations be able to effectively realize the value coming out of this, right? And that's where, if you're looking into why you need to have an asset management solution, your objective may be to start with this: optimizing software and mitigate compliance risks, right? But most softwares are only focused on reporting. With Servicenow, we focus on the entire life cycle through our messaging of the platform and the workflow capability. So this is where I will take my pause here. I will now start to hand this over to Manish, who will run through the demo. And if there's any questions, feel free to post out the questions. We will address as many of the questions as required. Thank you. Manish, you want to take over the screen?
Hey, thanks. Thank you, Daniel. You've made my job easy, hopefully. So let me start presenting. And like Daniel has already mentioned, please feel free to ask questions. I will start presenting in a minute.
I think there is a question from Donnie. Donnie, you may need to unmute yourself first.
Halo, selamat siang Pak Doni. Apakah ada pertanyaan?
Saya mau tanya, tadi yang kedengeran ya suara saya ya?
Iya, kedengaran. Oke,
tadi ya di presentasinya Daniel mengenai yang slide kedua kalau saya nggak salah, yang reduce non-suspend, itu yang ada logo itu, ada G Suite, ada Zoom, Jira. Apakah Microsoft 365 tidak termasuk di situ ya?
Oke, coba biar saya sampaikan. So, Daniel,
I understand the question.
Okay.
Yes. So yes, we do support Office 365. Your question is a good question, right? The reason why we didn't list it there is because Office 365 is a more complicated one. If you want to look at it purely from a SaaS perspective, you can do that, right? But it doesn't give you a complete picture of the licensing from Microsoft. Remember, some software are actually installed onto the end user's laptop, right? And Microsoft will also look into all those to calculate the entire license position between the E3s and the E5. So that's why we categorize them under the phase 3 on Microsoft, so that you can actually measure the usage both on premise and the SaaS. Does it help, or maybe you need a translation into Bahasa Indonesia?
Okay, I get it. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Okay, and I might be able to just show you a glimpse of how Office 365 is managed, particularly the hybrid kind. I'll bring that up very shortly. Okay, now thank you for this opportunity. What you can see is an overall dashboard, right? So we will take a top-down approach to see, how you start realizing value based on the information that Daniel shared, right? Because that is indeed a lot of information, right? And where do the benefits actually come from? How can you start realizing the values, right? So broadly, like in one of the slides that Daniel showed, there's three kinds of software. One is the on-prem one, which is typically deployed within the data center. Secondly is the hybrid one that we just talked about. Office 365 is the hybrid kind, which is partly governed from the SaaS or the vendor organization, and partly from the usage metrics that you gather from tools like SCCM. Both of these need to come into play, right? And then there's the pure play SaaS kind of softwares that Daniel showed, which includes Zoom, Jira, Cisco WebEx, etc. So starting with the pure play on-prem one, which is where the bigger players who've been there for longer in the market, their software is analyzed. So what we're seeing is a software publisher analytics view, as it suggests here. So in this quick overview, we're going to look at 5 different publishers: Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, VMware, Citrix, and SAP, because they have different licensing metrics, right? But it'll just be like a quick overview. It's not going to be like really a deep dive. On Microsoft, what we're seeing here is a summary dashboard of all the products from Microsoft, right? And how many of the products are out of compliance, they're not in compliance. What's the true up cost? Now, true up cost is a very interesting one, because if softwares procured by the organization are not utilized well, are not deployed appropriately, without understanding the contract, then it can lead to a potential true up cost situation, which is sometimes can be an unpleasant discussion with the vendor, because if you're not able to justify, then organizations have to spend list price on that day when Microsoft or other vendor, maybe like Oracle, will start showing you the usage, right? You may have purchased it for a discounted amount, but then you will end up paying list price on that day when it's proven to you that you didn't use it properly. And then there's over licensed amount. Things like you've got enough licenses, but you're not optimally using it, right? That's the third tile here we see on the top right hand side. And then there's potential reclamations. So we can reclaim software. If somebody doesn't need, the example that Daniel just told us was about Microsoft Office 365. the E3, the edition E3 can be more expensive than, let's say, for example, F3, right? And based on usage, if you find that, some people are not utilizing all the softwares bundled within E3 well enough, then you can change the entitlement for that group or that individual to go to F3, which is cheaper. For example, I think the old pricing was E3 was like $20 per user, and F3 was like $4, something like that, right? So you can actually guide them, saying that, okay, we see that you're not using it well. Why don't you use F3, and then help the organization save some money. So you can reclaim licenses that way. And then what can be potential savings based on usage and overall utilization, right? And a quick summary of the actual savings year to date. So we can sort that as we would require, slice and dice that information. We can get into further details like products by true-up cost. Which are the key products contributing to the true-up cost? For example, in this case, you will see Windows Server stacking up 198.2K US dollars. Project is the next biggest one, which is about 41, nearly 42K. Office 365 is the other one, and so on, which is SQL Server, etc. And then which products, if managed well, can give savings, right? And the important one in not only current context, but also from a point of view of compliance and also the health and availability of business applications, the end-of-life products. Understanding, simple things like end of support, end of life, and end of extended support are very crucial, because you will not be able to manage your live production business environment if this is not factored. Managing change in that context will be very difficult. It might also be a case where the vendor also lands up, the publisher also lands up and says, you've not used it well. So that will be a double whammy in a negative way, actually, right? So in that widget, you can see there's Access, there's BizTalk Server, Dynamics, etc. All of these softwares, which are having their end of support, end of life, end of extended support dates. You can get into details of these as well. Plus SQL Server install breakdown. CLS example that Daniel just showed is a key one, because that's where savings can potentially come from. And likewise, SQL Server active rights breakdown by software, by edition, by license metric. Of course, you can group them by license metric. You can stack them by individual per core, per device cal, per server, per instance, per user cal, etc., and get those details out. So it's a very simple yet quite useful kind of a dashboard for various organizations. I'll pause a moment here. Any questions?
Hi, Manis. So
Yeah.
there is a question from Pak Yadi Riyadi. So he asks about does the asset management in Servicenow capture the data real time data or not?
Yes, right. So for these softwares, the usage data or the metering data comes in from SCCM, if it's from the end user side, or if it's purely from the data center side, where we want to understand the bigger kind of software like what we're seeing here, then it comes from our discovery, right?
Yeah.
That is captured in real time. And that's
Okay.
why you have this dashboard. So why, again, to take a step back, one of the slides that Daniel was showing, can we prove it? It's not only to ourselves, but it's also to the vendor, saying that this is what we have purchased. These are our entitlements. And then, by the way, we'll have a quick discussion on that as well, where we import entitlements. And then this is what we have deployed. This is how we are using it. So we have the means to prove it. And ServiceNow has done pretty well in 3 years to go from a niche to a leader in that space. there's other people who've been in that field for 20 plus years, right? But then it's the ability to integrate with other softwares, and importantly, have a real-time CMDB, a near real-time CMDB becomes very important in providing this information. So yes, to answer your question in a slightly long way, this is coming in from usage data in almost real time. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Manis.
Right. Thanks. So let's look at where the savings come from, and then we'll possibly look at true up cost, and then we can look at the other capabilities of SAM. Okay. This should refresh in a minute. Please bear with me. Okay. Slowly coming up. So now we see that this is potential savings by publisher Microsoft. Now there's various other details also provided, but we'll go one by one. Now in this time slice from week 44 in 2020 to week 47 in 2020, what you see on the x-axis is the trend that has been captured. Of course, we can change that. We can look at all, can make it all, and then apply that, and so we can see all the titles, all the metrics. We can see like year to date, right? And then we can apply that as well. So we can have the reports based on the way we would like it, right? So we are going from the 26th of August, sorry, pardon me, 26th of October to 16th of November, right? So I can change that. I can make it like maybe 09 and then apply that. And the pattern will be more or less the same because this is our demo environment. But this is for you to realize that if you have a really dynamic environment, you can slice and dice. You can go from weekly to 4-week running sum to 13-week running sum, etc. You can go by year sum. You can go by fiscal year sum. You can go by year average. You can really make a good conversation with the procurement guys and with the finance guys as well, because they will have data sorted in various ways. So you can align with their requirement. Now, importantly, where is this coming from? Where the potential savings coming from? So we'll look at that in just a minute. I've clicked on the records. So mostly the savings are coming from two products from Microsoft. One is Project and the other one is Visio, right? And obviously the status is not compliant, right? So if you get them back into compliance, first of all, you need to understand who's using what and how much, right? What's the potential true-up cost here? In this case, in the case of Project, it's nearly 41,500 USD, right? And then you can bring that back. So let's look at, for this product result, where can we look at further details? Okay, bear with me. I haven't shared my full desktop, therefore the window that has spawned out is not visible. I've shared only one Chrome tab. I need to reshare. Yeah, bear with me. Let me just share the full desktop. Please bear with me. I need to stop this and reshare again. Bear with me. Yeah? Okay, here we go. I'm sharing my entire desktop now. Okay, so I was on this screen. Yeah, if you recall, I was on this screen. So we went from here to, yeah, that should come up now. This is the right representation. So under the product result that we saw for Microsoft Project, we clicked on the details to see that there's 4 software model results, which shows project 2016 standard Windows, 2013 professional, 2013 standard Windows, and 2016 professional Windows, of which you have certain unlicensed installs and certain over licensed amounts, right? As you can see here. So for unlicensed installs, we have 35 installs, and for project 2013 professional, we have 19 of them, right? And okay, we can actually see where that is coming from. This will give further clarity, right? Particularly for the non-compliant one, right? So we see that, for professional, the project professional 2016, which is not compliant anyway, the true-up cost is 41,500 plus, which is licensed per device here. And there are 4 remediation options, right? So we'll come to this in just a minute. These are all the unlicensed installs, right? They are coming in from, obviously, these users assigned to Sam, Sorokin, Rebecca, Reginald, Freddie, Fred. This name, of course, as you may know, is our founder, but his name has been used as one of the users in this demo, right? It's just a note, right? So where have they installed this software on, right? They've been installed on these CIs, on these laptops or these desktops or whatever, right? So you can see that all of these users are having Microsoft Project Professional 2016, and they've been assigned to these guys. So what can we do to bring them back, to basically remove that license? So Sam has got orchestration capabilities to trigger uninstall workflow, right? So as you see here in the second column, for each of these removable candidates, there is, remove Microsoft Project Professional because of low usage, right, of this product. So we can just take it back, and we can realize the potential savings, right, and ensure that we can save some money. There's also the state. Some of these people are actually ready because there's already an initiation done with them. But for some, there's awaiting approval, as you can see here, right? Because you need to go through a proper change, which is backed by approval, etc., and then go through that process, and then you eventually realize the savings, right? And you can look at the one that I wanted to show you, remediation options. What are the remediation options, right? You can purchase the rights, you can create allocations, you can remove unlicensed installs or remove unallocated installs. So let's say, for example, purchase rights, and I want to make them like compliant, right? So as you can see here, I'm on purchase rights. I can create a purchase order, which I'm doing just now. It has spawned off the workflow here, and with due by whatever date, let's say 18th of November 2020, status is requested, ship to, let's say, just give a name like MII, for example, friends, with a short description. Of course, this needs to be as part of this list, obviously, otherwise this will not go through. So I need to search on, let's say, something that's within the organization, right? And then eventually go through this purchase order. I need not actually give this because it's a process at the back, and then I can raise this purchase order. So everything is within one workflow, right? And there you have the workflow triggering for which assets will have the licenses and brought back under compliance. Okay, now Any questions on this before I move to the other sections?
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
So there is question from Pak Yakub about the item license calculation based on what? Based on device or based on computer?
Okay, good question. It comes in based on whatever you have contracted. It could be per device, per instance, per user cal, whatever you have been contracted. That's the reason why the vendors can come in and say, you are not complying with what you've contracted. And therefore, we can help you manage that in a better way. So where does the other bit come in from? You can import the entitlements, this is purely contractual information, right? So there's a template which you can download, which I'm doing just now. You can download and provide information as per that template. As you see, there's export happening, and now I can download, and in a minute I'll be showing that. And you can populate this entitlement and upload it back to the instance. And that's where the reconciliation will start happening. What you have purchased, how much, how many licenses, what version, editions, etc., with the things like username or owner name, etc. So I'm just showing that in a minute. Yeah, I hope you can see this. Yeah, there you go. All right, so it will be something like this in this format: publisher part number, publisher product version, edition, platform, language, named user type, etc. So we populate all of this, or at least whatever information we have access to, and then upload it back onto the instance. Bear with me. I will just navigate back here, right, and then upload this. Drag and drop, or just browse this, and that's when the reconciliation will start, right? So what you use plus what you've purchased is both of these sets are used to give you a license position report, right? And it'll tell you what is compliant or not compliant, right? So very quickly, I'll spend a minute here because I know we are like short of time. There's a lot to cover, but right. So this dashboard, which is the license workbench, will provide you what softwares you're compliant and what you're not compliant. All these reds are not compliant, and the greens are you're compliant, right? Now the position reports is what is fundamental to this, right? So for each of these, like we saw, like we briefly discussed earlier, Microsoft Office 365 Enterprise E5, that's the product. Edition is E5, status is compliant, and is there any license metric? Maybe not in this case, but maybe there is a per instance on a server for Exchange 2016 Enterprise, which is the older licensing. Or, for example, Oracle database, server 11G R2 standard. That's per named user plus, right? These metrics are understood, and therefore they're called out for compliance or not compliance, and usage as well, which comes in from discovery. So it's a well-rounded perspective about whether you're compliant or not. Does that help? So we've shown you where information comes from, who's using it, how much, etc., and then is it compliant as an overall status. Okay, does that help?
Yeah. Thank you, Manis.
Okay, right. And quickly, the one that we discussed earlier about Office 365 and Adobe Cloud, right? So this dashboard, similar to the earlier one that we've seen, except has more details from subscriptions perspective, not so much the licenses, but these are subscriptions because this is partly SaaS, right? So this is a hybrid model. So in this, you'll see number of assigned subscriptions. What is the percentage of unused subscriptions? In this case, it's 11.09%. The total number of purchased subscriptions, you have 613 of these subscriptions. What's the current subscription spend, right? And then you're sorting this data of what we just discussed in, right? You will also understand which of the models are out of compliance, and what's the true up cost. And of course, you can sort whether it's Adobe or Microsoft 365, etc. Like we see here. We can just do a quick run through here. Let me see which one I can quickly take. For example, let's say Office 365. And I apply this, and you should see this refreshed for only Office 365 here, the top ones by breakdown. Right, all of these are for Office 365. Right, so and the couple of other avenues for managing spend, what Daniel also discussed, is the overlapping software. Right, organizations can sometimes go out of the rules or governance rules. They go and issue purchase orders or use their whatever way to get around and buy additional subscriptions or licenses. So that's why you have duplicates. For example, as we see in this case, this video conferencing software, there's many titles. When we need only maybe Teams or Zoom or whatever, people tend to buy more. So you can see more of the same kind of software, which is basically communication and conferencing. Connect, HipChat, all of this. So potentially, if you stick to only one of them, maybe like Zoom, I'm not advocating, but if you stick to one of them, all of the others can be either renegotiated or done away with completely, and you can realize all of these spend here just on video conferencing. So there's many avenues to realize spend, right? There's also engineering software, but I'm not sure if that will be of interest to you. This needs a little bit of a tune up. So that also can be managed, and like we see the other software, which is the pure play SaaS. We can have a quick view of SaaS. We saw the on-prem one, the hybrid one, and this is the SaaS one. Now, SaaS one, let's take for example the popular one, like let's say Zoom and Zoom Co-op edition or the enterprise edition, right? So we see the total subscription spend is 2.31 million. Unused is 0.73%. Is there any savings? Because everybody is using it pretty well, so there's possibly no room for savings, right? Assigned subscription nearly 14,000, etc. So this kind of information will really help you. What are the titles or softwares can we do? We can do Box, DocuSign, Dropbox, GitHub, Google Suite, Salesforce, of course. There's a whole bunch of them. If something that you see, if you don't see on this list, we can quickly use our APIs to go and integrate with them and bring that under management as well. Right? I've exceeded my time, but do feel free to ask questions if there's any. More than happy to take them.
Thank you, Manis.
Sure.
Dari Bapak Ibu, apakah ada pertanyaan, bisa langsung ditanyakan dengan open mic atau bisa tulis di kolom chat ya untuk pertanyaannya. Sambil nunggu ada pertanyaan, saya mau reminder lagi, jangan lupa nanti di akhir sesi bisa untuk ini ya, jangan lupa untuk klik link survei yang ada di kolom chat juga. Nanti bisa dari Bapak Ibu yang mengisi juga akan dapat Certificate of Attendees.
I think there is a question.
Ya, halo Pak Kevin.
Oh, iya Pak.
Ya,
Doni.
untuk Servicenow ini apakah hanya aset manajemen saja atau juga ada ini seperti ticketing support gitu seperti yang di Fresh Service?
Oh, kapabilitasnya ya Pak ya?
Ya, fiturnya.
Oh, oke. Nanti dari sebentar ya Pak ya. Si
You
Juan.
can address to that.
And then yeah.
Yes.
Is there any capabilities beside the IT asset management for the ServiceNow?
ServiceNow is a very wide capability product. In fact, the ServiceNow is actually more well known for ITSM, all right, IT service management, which is where the ticketings and all those are actually where a lot of the customers start adopting the solutioning from ServiceNow first. So yes, the answer is we do have that, and even more, plus more, right? It's just that this is a very focused session, so we didn't want to confuse and complicate. But if you're talking about a platform to actually adopt the entire enterprise workflow, we have the workflow to even plan your business, right, in the IT business management. Even in the areas of IT operations management, you can manage the entire organization's operational management workflow, right? Security operations. I can keep going on, right? I just want to keep it short and simple here first, so that I think the gist of the message is for you to know we are much more than that, and really depending on your problem or your so-called transformation initiative your company has, MII together with us, we're more than glad to have a deeper conversation with each and every one of you. I hope that helps.
Ya, thanks Daniel. Pak Doni ya tadi
Ya,
udah
oke.
cukup jelas Pak. Iya, jadi
Cukup.
untuk ServiceNow sendiri ada modul-modul lain selain dari IT Asset Management Pak. Jadi memang ada ITSM dan modul-modul lainnya Pak. Cuman memang hari ini sesinya ini khusus untuk ngejelasin dari sisi aset manajemen sih Pak.
Oke Pak, thank you.
Is there any more question?
There is a request from Pak Yakub, si Juan. Pak Yakub request to sharing session about the ServiceNow module for the overall, and also the sharing session for Now platform. Iya Pak, terima kasih Pak Yakub buat
Sorry, Kevin,
masukannya Pak.
I lost you a little bit on the last 3 seconds.
Yeah. There is a request from Pak Yakub. The first request from Pak Yakub is the sharing session about overall module from ServiceNow, and the second is the sharing session of Now platform.
Ya, Pak Yakub, ini untuk requestnya kita noted dulu. Terima kasih untuk masukannya, Pak. Oke, apakah ada pertanyaan lain lagi, Pak? Mungkin dari Bapak atau Ibu hadirin sekalian. Jadi kalau misalkan ada beberapa pertanyaan lain, boleh disampaikan melalui chat ataupun melalui mic-nya langsung. Jadi biar kita bisa langsung jawab interaksi secara langsung saat ini juga.
If it's okay, I just want to show a very quick slide about the offering of ServiceNow from an IT workflow perspective. Since PyOQ asked for that quick one, right? So we can still have a detailed one, but I just want to share a quick one first. Can you all see my screen?
I think it's still Manny's screen lah, not yours. Can.
Oh, now I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Daniel again.
I cannot see your screen.
I don't know why the Teams keep taking away my sharing.
Maybe Manny's, can you choose to stop screen? Share this, the X one, the third.
Done that.
Yeah.
Okay, let me try
then.
again. Okay, can you see my screen now?
Can.
Okay. So today I mark up this red area. This is where we talk about IT asset management. Actually, is quite wide, right? So today we talk about the software asset management area. This very small corner here, right? But if you look at it from a ServiceNow offering, as per PyOQ's question, we have this offering on IT service management, the usual one: incident, change, release, problem, request. All these are all part of it, right? Then the IT operations management, where you're able to discover whatever is in your enterprise, understand if the operation is running okay, and then correcting it if something is wrong. Optimize for your cloud usage if they are multi-clouds or even single cloud. Then over here is around the hardware asset management, right? And even at DevOps level, right? If your organization is looking into how you can speed up the DevOps process as it relates to your automated change management process, right? We connect to the likes of the Jira, right? The Azure DevOps, all this to actually help organizations achieve the fastest speeds possible on DevOps. And you see the next one, we also provide solutions around security operations, be enabling your security team to work with your IT team as a unified team, right? Workflows moving across them seamlessly to solve security incident issues, vulnerability issues, right? Or even integrated risk management, where we talk about the GRC, right? Governance, risk, and compliance. So these are the ones where we even provide BCM solutions, risk management solutions, right? Vendor risk management solution. And last but not least, there's this IT business management solution, where your company can have a demand and idea areas of portfolio, right? How do you manage that demand process, understanding the ROI for the company, and then eventually running a project, whether be it a typical agile project or a legacy waterfall project, or even a hybrid project, right? And manage them. And these are all individual solutions, but they are all linked and tied through the platform. So the data models are a single unified model. That is why when we offer all these solutions, all this can be turned on very quickly, and our customers can start realizing the value very quickly, because each one of them can have the ability to actually connect to one another seamlessly. Okay. So this is all I want to share right now to keep it simple. If there's any questions, I would be, available to answer questions together with Manish and Sijuan here.
Feel free to ask your questions. Thank you. Or Kevin, if there is no further question, do you want to do a closing statement? Then, if there is any questions coming from the attendees, whether in the chat or in the email, we can address it separately after the session.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sichuan. Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, Manish, for all your support and for this webinar. Untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian, jika masih ada pertanyaan bisa nanti mengirimkan email atau bisa juga menghubungi saya langsung nanti untuk jika ada pertanyaan baik itu untuk Servicenow-nya sendiri atau modul-modul yang lebih spesifik ya. Saya juga mau mengingatkan untuk terakhir kalinya jangan lupa untuk mengisi feedback form ya. Sekian dan terima kasih untuk hadir di webinar ini. Semoga untuk webinar kali ini dari Bapak Ibu sekalian bisa mendapatkan gambaran mengenai solusi dari Servicenow, yaitu dari untuk kali ini yaitu software asset management. Jadi bisa semoga bisa memiliki gambaran bagaimana mengelola dari sisi software dan hardware-nya. Jadi supaya perusahaan Bapak Ibu bisa lebih efektif untuk mengelola dari sisi software dan aset-aset software dan hardware supaya lebih efisien dan optimal lagi dalam mengelola aset-aset yang dimiliki. Terima kasih untuk semuanya ya. Saya sudahi dulu untuk webinar kali ini. Terima kasih atas kehadiran. Nanti ditunggu untuk kehadiran di webinar berikutnya yang direncanakan pada tanggal 15 Desember. Itu nanti kami akan kirimkan undangannya kembali untuk tanggal 15 Desember ya. Untuk sekali lagi terima kasih untuk Bapak Ibu sekalian untuk hadir di webinar kali ini. Thank you Sijuan, Menis, and Daniel for your support for this webinar.
I'd like to thank the audience too for all the interesting questions too. Thank you all.
Thank you everyone for joining us in this session. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.